Good morning. You ready?
Sorry, I am now.
Okay, good deal. Good morning. Welcome to the Northpoint of View. I'm here with Dr. Walter Kemmsies. Walter, good morning.
Good morning, Mark. How are you?
I'm good, man. How are you?
I'm okay.
Getting ready to roll into a nice 3-day weekend.
Mm-hmm.
So you guys are catching us in a particularly chipper mood today, right?
Absolutely.
And I think we've decided that we're going to sort of put a positive, sunny viewpoint on a few of the things that we've been talking about.
Yeah, especially the ones that we weren't talking very nicely about.
Yeah. So one of the things that we mentioned this morning, just in our conversation, was the bias that we come into most conversations with, right?
Right.
I mean, we all have bias.
Not me.
Really?
Just kidding.
Let's talk about Jerome Powell and Fed.
Well, no,
The ability to make a good decision.
Exactly. No, I have one very big bias that and I admit it. I believe in free markets.
Yeah.
I don't think markets always work. There are times when you do need society to step in, times of war, hurricanes, but
Right.
your first instinct shouldn't be, let's have the government do something. The first instinct should be, can the market do this? And the answer is always yes.
But in terms of, general thoughts, let's just take the EV for a minute.
Exactly.
We have sort of been pushing against some of the thinking, underpinning, the EV, the growth of EV, the sort of the government, intervention, the some of the tax credits, and maybe the bias is against an artificial market, right?
Yeah, that's true. We don't like government intervention.
Right. But today there was an article in the Wall Street Journal where Ford and Tesla have agreed to work together, combine resources, and use the same charging platform. Right.
That's right. That was in the morning paper.
And so I don't know, to take the sort of the alternate sort of conversation line that we've been on, it's the, what if? What if this, all of these pieces sort of get traction and we compress this thing from what I think I've been thinking is sort of like a 10-year, timeline to get traction to a 5-year
exactly
timeline. Then I think the whole thing starts to change, right? Pretty rapidly.
Well, it does, but let's just start off with the bias part first. I have a comment on that. I do not like electric vehicles.
Well, there you go. Thank you.
Okay, to be honest.
He said it.
I'm hoping that by the time I expire, I'm not forced to buy an EV, because the way things are set up right now is not very good. I have a friend of mine who has to drive to Atlanta, and if he doesn't know exactly where the charging station is, he's afraid to do it.
Right.
We won't say which car it is, but it has a 325-mile range. You can look it up and guess.
Yeah.
But leaving from here, it's 260 miles to downtown Atlanta from where I live. And with the hilliness that you run into as you get towards Atlanta, no thank you.
Yeah.
You
better have a place in Macon.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You have to be very focused. So,
and yet it has to be between certain hours, and there's some variables right now that make it, there's a question mark.
Right. And I was at a McKinsey conference on electric vehicles about 3 weeks ago. It's very nice of them to invite me. We had a bunch of automobile executives there, a gaggle of consultant guys like me and the DOT.
A gaggle?
Yeah, there's a gaggle. Oh, it's half a gaggle maybe.
You know what they call a herd of rhinos? It's a crash.
I didn't know that.
I think it maybe a crash more than a gaggle. Anyway, go ahead.
So what I learned, they asked us our opinions and things, and I just said on the charging locations that they're broken down an awful lot.
Yeah.
And a lot less reliable. And they said, you're correct. The one specialist said they work 70% of the time. So, here's how I see it. All right, I get in a car. I'm going down the highway. The road is hillier than I thought it would be because my iPhone doesn't have terrain in there. There's no function in my GPS to tell me, watch out, you're going into a very hilly territory. Either you know that going in or you get surprised. So let's say you get surprised. Maybe I should really be recharging, and I see a charging station and it's not for my brand car. So I look for another one, and there aren't that many off the interstate. And hopefully I get lucky. Otherwise, I have to, call for a car tow. That's why I'm not interested in buying an electric vehicle.
Yeah, I get it.
It's a lot to be done.
And so therein lies the bias, right?
Right.
But if we're able to leap over that, which is no easy task at this point, but let's say that, with this announcement, Ford and Tesla,
Explain the announcement.
Combine resources. And by the way, I don't know if you read the article, but the CEO for Ford, I think his name is Farley, said that literally it came about from a road trip with his family where the kids in the back seat are yelling, "Hey, Dad, pull over, there's a charging station." And after the third one, he said, "No, that's Mr. Musk's charging station."
Yeah.
He called his assistant to, get us an appointment because it's real, right?
Yeah.
I mean, but if you take that and skip over that, then let's take a minute and go somewhere we haven't gone. And that is what does happen in 5 years. Let's take one aspect and say there are plenty of charging stations that work 98% of the time where there's no bias against that one issue. There are other issues, obviously.
Yeah.
There's no bias against that one issue. Then what begins to happen in terms of the production of EVs and how that affects, everything that we're doing right now?
Well, I'll tell you what I really would like to see happen. Instead of all of these charging stations, because when you're driving down the interstate, you got your family, like I lived in New Jersey, one time we decided to drive down to Virginia, just get a couple of days off, visit Williamsburg, and etc. I would not have been able to have gone from where I lived to where I was going in one go. I would have had to stop along the way and charge the car. And when I lived in Jersey, the technology, which keeps evolving and getting better, would have required me to sit there for hours while the car recharged.
Yeah, it's got to be a supercharger. That's absolutely it.
So what China's been experimenting with, and this is what I would like to see our government do, as opposed to, putting money at the charging stations all over the place, is there's a 50-mile highway stretch in one of the big highways in China where there's solar panels collecting the sunlight. And you know how you can take your phone and put it on a magnetic charging station?
Yeah.
Well, they do the same thing, and they recharge the electric car batteries as you're going along. And they also put infrastructure on the highway that basically you can take your hands off the wheel because the car can read the road, and it has radar, and it knows where the other cars are, and it's a limited access highway. And I would love to drive those 50 miles because you wouldn't be driving them. You just literally engage in neutral or put the autopilot, and sit back, and you don't even have to worry about charging. The car is getting charged as it goes down the highway.
See, you already jumped like 4 steps ahead of me. I was thinking about a universal plug, and you're just like, throw the plugs away. Let's just ride down the highway and let the solar beams recharge the car.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah.
But
And so
you're right.
I didn't even realize that was a thing in China. It's available.
Yeah, I read automotive news. As you know, I've always been an auto geek. I love cars. I just don't like to own cars. But I love cars. My grandfather built the first Volkswagen ever in Brazil.
Yeah.
And opened all the dealerships.
That's a cool story.
It is. I mean, it was just great stuff, And
We should buy VW stock just for that.
Exactly. Well, they're number 2. So, my uncle built 5 or 6 MGTC TD vintage vehicles out of spare parts from the junkyard.
Wow.
So when I was a kid, I got to go with him to the junkyard, and there's no cooler place to go when you're a kid.
No kidding.
It's just so awesome. But anyways, I like the cars. But the key thing to me on this is that you do need to standardize the plug. Can you imagine if you could only go to a gas station that had a certain plug for your Volkswagen, and I could only go to a certain type of gas station for my Toyota. It'd be ridiculous.
That's pretty inefficient when you think about it.
Yeah.
It's really inefficient when you think about, 5 or 6 different types of charging stations out there.
Exactly. And the government, under the National Electric Vehicle Infrastructure, they just published that NEVI study about a year ago. Georgia has its own NEVI policy. But basically, under that, it explains how you can get the funding to get chargers built all over the place. But there's still so many other complications, Mark. I live in an apartment building, okay? There's 18 apartments in my building. I'm making this up, but, So I got 18. I have to park outside. We don't build big parking garages in Savannah. And I need to charge my car. There's no plug. How do I do this?
Right.
I got to find maybe at my place of work I can get it charged. Do I get an extension cord? And then even if I use, let's say there's a public outlet in the parking lot and I use it, everybody's paying for my electricity.
Yeah. Yeah. There's some fundamental things, and I hadn't really thought about it, but I mean, there's a collaboration that's absolutely got to take place for us to move this time frame from 15 years to 5, right? And it's got to happen now. There's a good friend of ours, a great mutual friend. His name is Jim. We'll leave it at that.
Right.
But he said that there is a absolute bona fide litmus test for the acceptability of EV transportation. And he says it's the Albany, Georgia Golf Club and the F-150s in the parking lot. He said, when those boys, and it's all Benny if you're a local, but Albany, Georgia, F-150s, he said, when those guys go from gas and diesel to electric, then it's worldwide acceptance. So he's down there this weekend playing in a golf tournament. I'll check with him on Monday or Tuesday to see if they've made the switch yet. If not, we'll keep kicking the can down the road, right?
That is a really interesting point. I, at this point, cannot imagine myself buying an electric vehicle.
Yeah.
And it's not that I like to pollute or anything like that, but it's just that I think it would be so inconvenient. I think electric vehicles at this point are more of a hobby toy than something, that I'd feel comfortable relying on.
Yeah. However, there's a tipping point.
Yeah. Well,
and I think the news today, again, I'm with you.
But you know what? To the credit of all of the automakers, they're listening to the consumer.
Yeah.
And they're saying, why wouldn't you want to buy this? And they ask the question, they respond, they don't ignore what they hear back, they go and make adjustments. But to me, it's surprising that Ford and Tesla would have to, hey, why don't we share plugs? Come on, you should have done this years ago.
Well, and the quote from Musk this morning was that, and maybe it was both of them, that there will be more participants in the partnership. So we'll see. I don't know if that's the end of bias, but anyway, that's the end of this podcast.
That's right.
Walter, always great being with you.
Yeah, same here, Mark.
All right,
Take
thanks,
care.
man. See you guys.